Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. Buckle up, because 7 days ago, my wife told me she regretted every single day with me. And this morning, her best friend knocked on my door and whispered, "You deserve to know what she's planning next." Let me rewind. Not all the way, just to the last night I spent in our home. I didn't sleep in our bed that night. I hadn't for months. She said I breathed too loud. So I'd been exiled to the couch, the one that sinks in the middle and smells faintly like the dog we never got around to training. At 2:11 a.m., I heard her in the kitchen, whispering, laughing. I thought she was on a work call. She works with clients overseas, Japan mostly. But then she said it. "He won't do anything. He never does. He's just safe." And then, that's what makes it so easy. Easy. I don't know why that word was the one that gutted me. The next morning, she sat across from me at breakfast, spooned half a grapefruit like she wasn't plotting something behind my back, and said it as casually as a weather report. "I regret every day with you." No explanation. No tears. Just a flick of her hair and a glance at her phone. I took off my ring, tossed it next to her spoon, said, "Then let this be the last one." I walked out. No suitcase. No plan. Just the sound of her yawning behind me like I was the one interrupting her peace. But that's not the shocking part. That came 7 days later. I'd been crashing at this cheap motel, Regal Pines, which is neither regal nor near any pines. My phone was off. I didn't want apologies. Didn't want talks. I just wanted to vanish. Until this morning. There was a knock. I thought it was room service. Maybe someone dropped off those weird wrapped muffins they give you at checkout. But when I opened the door, it wasn't a stranger. It was Mara, Trina's best friend. The maid of honor at our wedding. The one who used to call me Loyal Lowell, like it was some kind of backhanded nickname. She looked different. Disheveled. Like she'd barely slept. She didn't ask to come in. She just walked in. And then she said it. "Trina's not who you think she is. She hasn't been for a long time. And what she's planning now, you need to stop her before it's too late." I just stared at her. Because the truth is, I had no idea what she meant. But something in her voice told me. I was already too late. I stood there in the doorway like an idiot, still holding the motel door open like I was waiting for the punchline. Mara, Trina's best friend, the woman who once mocked my Spotify playlists and told me I looked like someone who still paid for AOL, was now pacing my room like she was the one whose marriage just imploded. She hadn't even said hello. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying for days. But her voice was steady. Shaky hands, but steady words. She looked at me and said, "You weren't supposed to find out yet, but she's moving fast. Too fast. And if you don't act now, she's going to bury you." I asked her to sit down. She didn't. I asked her what she meant. She hesitated, bit her lip, and then did that thing people do in movies when they're about to ruin someone's life. You know, the big exhale, the "you deserve the truth" moment. I was bracing for an affair. Honestly, I could already feel my stomach clench in preparation. I figured she'd slept with someone at work, or maybe reconnected with an ex, or found one of those sleazy second-chance dating sites for married people. But no, it was worse than that. Not more vulgar, just colder. "She's transferring everything into her name," Mara said. "The accounts, the house, your shared investments, everything. She's already met with a lawyer. She's setting up the narrative to make it look like you were unstable, neglectful, emotionally manipulative." I laughed. Like, an actual laugh escaped my mouth. Because I thought she was joking. Me? Manipulative? I've spent years apologizing for things I didn't do, for the sake of peace. I once sent her flowers for getting mad at me. She snapped at me for forgetting to thaw chicken. And I wrote her a handwritten apology and promised to plan meals better. I've been walking on eggshells so long my feet have splinters. And now she was painting me as a villain? I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. Mara stayed standing, arms crossed, like she was afraid if she stopped moving, she'd lose her nerve. She told me about messages Trina sent to a private group chat with her coworkers. Screenshots she wasn't supposed to see. Trina calling me a financial safety net, mocking my emotional fragility, saying she was close to freedom. One message read, "I've been timing everything. He won't see it coming. He'll fold like always." Fold. Like always. I could barely breathe. I asked Mara why she was telling me all this. Why now? Why not before? She looked guilty. Said she used to believe Trina's side of things. That I was boring, emotionally needy. A burden. But then she saw the way Trina was smiling about it. Gloating. Playing games with my life like it was a TV show she was binge-watching. "I don't know when she stopped loving you," Mara said quietly. "But I know when she stopped pretending. That was months ago." I wanted to throw something, scream, hit the wall. But all I could do was sit there, crushed under the weight of the truth. I was disposable, replaceable, just a stepping stone in someone else's escape plan. Mara opened her purse and pulled out a small flash drive. "Everything's on here," she said. "Emails, bank transfers, her messages. I took a risk giving it to you, but you need to protect yourself, Lowell." I didn't say thank you. Not because I wasn't grateful, but because my mouth wouldn't form the words. My tongue felt too heavy, my thoughts too slow. I'd spent the last week grieving a marriage. But now I realized I should have been preparing for war. And just before she left, Mara turned at the door and said something I still don't understand completely. "She thinks you'll crumble, that you'll run and hide. But if you make your move first, she won't see it coming." Then she was gone, and I was left sitting on a lumpy motel bed, holding a flash drive like it was a ticking bomb. She said I was forgettable, predictable, that she regretted every day with me. She has no idea who she married. I stared at the flash drive for a long time before I plugged it in. It sat there on the nightstand, glowing faintly like a secret waiting to destroy me. Part of me wanted to throw it out the window and pretend Mara had made it all up. Maybe she was bitter. Maybe she misread the situation. Maybe I deserved the quiet collapse of my marriage. Maybe I was just that forgettable. But deep down, I already knew better. When I finally opened my laptop, the screen reflected my face. Pale, bagged under the eyes, scruffier than I'd ever seen myself. I didn't recognize the man looking back. I clicked the folder labeled Trina_docs and braced for the kind of heartbreak you can't unsee. There were over 60 files. Screenshots, PDFs, audio clips, even a few screen recordings Mara had captured. I opened one at random. It was a bank transfer, $4,900 moved from our joint savings account to a personal one in her maiden name. The memo line read, "Paris Fund, Phase 2. Paris? We were supposed to go to Paris 2 years ago for our anniversary. I'd saved, planned, even started learning basic French phrases to surprise her. She canceled the trip last minute, said she had a work emergency, and couldn't leave the country. I ended up using the money to remodel the kitchen for her. Turns out the emergency was real, just not professional." Another file was a screen recording of her iMessage conversation with someone named S. At first, I thought it was a friend, until I read the words, "It's almost done. I'll cry if I need to. He'll believe whatever I say. He always does. Are you sure he won't contest anything? Trust me. He's the same guy who apologized for sneezing too loud. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him." I sat back in my chair, jaw clenched so hard I thought I chipped a molar. My chest felt like it was caving in. All the apologies I made. All the nights I asked if she was okay. All the "you're right, I'm sorry" lines I swallowed just to avoid a fight. It was never love to her. I was just a stepping stone. Predictable pawn. The worst was the audio. It was from a girls' night Zoom call, recorded by Mara months ago. Trina didn't know she'd left her mic unmuted after saying goodbye. What followed was the real her. Not the woman who smiled at dinner parties. Not the one who pecked my cheek before walking out the door. Lowell? He's my charity case. I stayed out of pity. He worships the ground I walk on. It's exhausting. I'm not his therapist. He's just emotionally low maintenance. That's why it's been so easy. And the laughter from the other women, her friends, it echoed like nails on a chalkboard. One of them said, "You're brutal." And she replied, "I'm just honest." He's background noise. I need to start hearing music again. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat there, heart pounding in my ears, lungs refusing to pull in air. Then I stood up, walked to the mirror, and looked at myself for a long, long time. And I said out loud to no one, "You were never safe. You were silent." I don't know how long I stood there, but when I turned back to the bed, my phone was buzzing. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. The voice on the other end was male, calm, detached. "Is this Lowell?" "Yeah." "Who's this?" "I'm calling on behalf of Trina Delaney. She's asked us to begin the preliminary transfer of assets associated with your joint accounts. We'll be sending some paperwork your way shortly." I didn't speak. Couldn't. He paused. "Sir." "Yeah." I said slowly, "Go ahead and send it. I'll be waiting." But this time, I wouldn't be signing anything without reading every word. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let her write the ending, because she may have started the game behind my back. But I just flipped the board. The envelope arrived 2 days later. I saw the delivery guy through the blinds. Neat hair, clipboard, polite knock. I didn't open the door. Just watched as he slid the thick white envelope through the mail slot like it was a casual invitation instead of a prepackaged betrayal. I let it sit on the floor for hours. The envelope stared at me from the living room rug like it had teeth. When I finally tore it open, the first thing I saw was Trina's name printed at the top of a legal document in bold lettering. Petition for divorce. No fault filing. It was almost laughable. No fault. As if the last decade of manipulation, quiet erasure, and emotional drain had just evaporated into nothing. And there it was, in black and white, her version of our story. A cold, careful rewrite of our marriage through a legal lens. Claims that I'd been increasingly erratic, that I struggled with communication, that I refused to participate in household responsibilities. Lies, all of it. The woman who used to hand me grocery lists as I left for work, now painting me as some absent, negligent man-child. The line that hit the hardest was one I couldn't stop rereading. Spouse exhibits dependent behavior, likely to resist separation. I guess loving someone too long is now considered a liability. But here's the twist. I didn't crumble. Not this time. I scanned the documents, highlighted every questionable line, flagged every bank transfer and asset shift, and booked an appointment with the only lawyer I could afford on short notice. A guy named Eugene Mathers, who ran a tiny office sandwiched between a laundromat and a vape shop. Eugene was in his 60s, wore tweed even though it was 87 degrees outside, and spoke with the kind of dry sarcasm that made you question if he was ever serious. He read the file, leaned back, and actually chuckled. "She really thinks she can walk away with everything, huh?" I nodded. "That's what she's planning." He didn't respond right away, just tapped the page with a chewed-up pencil and gave me a look that could only be described as amused. "Lowell, I've seen wolves in nicer clothing than your wife. But here's the thing, she left fingerprints. Everywhere." I handed him the flash drive Mara gave me. I told him everything, from the whispering in the kitchen to the messages, the audio, even the phone call from the firm pretending I'd already agreed to asset transfers. Eugene's demeanor shifted. He was still sarcastic, but now it had an edge. "You're not filing for divorce," he said, tapping his desk. "You're filing for fire." I blinked. "What does that mean?" He pulled out a yellow legal pad and started writing like a madman. "It means we don't just respond. We counter. We expose. We build a case so airtight it'll suffocate every lie she tried to slip through the cracks." For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, not heartbreak. Power. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted the truth to matter. I wanted my side of the story to mean something, to count, to break through her curated fiction. That night, I sat in the motel room and started writing. Not a letter to her, not a post online, just a document. A quiet, brutal list of everything I remembered. Every sacrifice. Every moment she chipped away at me with a smile on her face. Every time she told me I was too much for expressing a basic need. Every time I apologized for things I didn't even do, just to keep the peace. When I finished, it was 8 pages long. Not angry, just honest. I emailed it to Eugene. He responded with a single line. "This is your spine. I'll turn it into armor." I don't know what happens next. But I know this much. She thought I'd fold. Instead, I'm filing. The courthouse smelled like mildew and bureaucracy. You'd think a place that decided the fate of people's lives would smell more sterile, more clean. But no. It was carpeted in faded beige, lit with humming fluorescence, and filled with the kind of quiet tension that only comes when two people sit in a room pretending they don't hate each other. Trina sat across from me, wearing a navy blue blazer and a fake smile she probably rehearsed in the mirror. Her lawyer, some overpriced stormtrooper named Bryce something, kept whispering to her like this was a chess match instead of the unraveling of a 12-year marriage. She didn't look at me, not once. I wasn't expecting fireworks. I didn't want a dramatic scene. But I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd glance at me with something resembling humanity. But nope, just cold calculation. Eugene was late, naturally. So I sat there like a damp napkin in a room full of sharks, gripping the folder that held my entire marriage in paper form. Mara's flash drive, the message transcripts, audio files, screenshots, a timeline Eugene helped me stitch together that looked more like a crime report than a divorce defense. When Eugene finally walked in, coffee in one hand, mustard stain on his tie, he nodded at me and said, "Showtime." The hearing wasn't a trial. Not yet. It was a preliminary mediation, meant to establish financial disclosures and asset division. The idea was, if both sides played nice, they could avoid dragging it to court. But Trina had no idea I was done playing nice. Her lawyer started first, rattling off a list of demands like he was placing an order. Full ownership of the house. All shared liquid assets. Spousal support for emotional distress caused by my alleged instability. Even custody of the dog she never walked. I didn't speak. I just sat there, let them stack their cards. Then Eugene stood up, calm, bored even. "We'd like to submit Exhibit A through F." He placed a single USB drive on the table, followed by printed documentation. He spoke slowly, clearly. "This includes evidence of concealed bank transfers, private conversations describing a coordinated effort to manipulate financial assets, and personal admissions of dishonesty regarding the nature of this marriage." The room changed. Trina went pale. Her lawyer shifted in his seat. The judge, a woman with gray hair tied into a tight knot, raised her eyebrows. "These are very serious allegations," she said, flipping through the printouts. "Is the respondent aware this is a sworn statement?" Eugene nodded. "Yes, Your Honor, and we have more, but we thought we'd start small." Trina finally looked at me, and for a brief second, I saw something crack. Not guilt, not shame, just surprise. Like I'd grown a second head. She never thought I'd fight back. She thought I'd sign whatever she gave me, pack a suitcase, and quietly disappear like I always did after our fights. But now the judge was looking at her like she was the problem. Her lawyer was asking for a 5-minute recess. Eugene was sipping his coffee like it was a cold soda on a hot day. During that break, I walked outside. Needed air. I leaned against a concrete pillar in the parking lot and just let my brain go quiet for a second. And that's when I heard her voice behind me. "Mara." I turned around and there she was. Trench coat, sunglasses, hair in a messy bun. She looked tired but satisfied. Like someone who'd just hit send on the kind of email you can't take back. "I couldn't stay away," she said. "I had to see it." Her face. I laughed once, bitter, hollow. "You're enjoying this?" She looked me straight in the eye. "No, Lowell. I'm finally watching someone get what they've been dishing out for years." And then she did something that threw me completely off balance. She handed me a manila envelope. "This isn't about the divorce," she said. "This is about before. There's something else you need to know. Something you missed." I opened it. Photos. Scanned pages from what looked like old messages. But one name jumped out at me. A name I hadn't seen in years. Jasper Quinn. Trina's ex from before we got married. The one she said ghosted her. The one she swore she hadn't spoken to in over a decade. But now, staring at these messages, I realized that wasn't even close to the truth. Because while I was budgeting groceries, staying late at work, fixing her car and planning anniversary dinners, she was still talking to him. And from the looks of it, Jasper never really left. There are a few moments in life where the ground doesn't shake, but your entire reality still splits open beneath you. When I flipped open that manila envelope and saw Jasper Quinn's name tied to my wife's handwriting, that was one of those moments. I stood in the courthouse parking lot, holding the envelope like it was radioactive, flipping through screenshots and pages Mara had printed out for me. It was like watching a silent movie of my own humiliation. Images of text messages between Trina and Jasper spanning years. Not weeks. Not months. Years. I saw things I can't unsee. Words like, "He still brings me coffee every Sunday. Like clockwork. If you'd asked me 3 years ago, I would have left him that night. I don't love him. I just don't want to leave empty-handed." There were photos too. Nothing obscene, but damning. A concert selfie dated 2 summers ago. The same weekend Trina said she was at her cousin's lake house. A restaurant receipt with 2 entrees and a bottle of wine from a place we'd never eaten at together. And then there were the boarding passes, digital copies of flights booked under her maiden name and Jasper's last name. Same destination, same return date, hidden, private, buried behind carefully changed passwords. I felt sick. It wasn't just the affair, though that alone was bad enough. It was the sheer timeline of it. The sheer audacity. The years I spent thinking we were just going through a rough patch. Meanwhile, she was flying out to meet another man and laughing behind my back with her friends about how easily I could be strung along. I had been blind. Desperately, pathetically blind. And maybe that's what hurts most. Knowing I let it happen because I wanted to believe I was still loved. When I walked back into the courthouse, the hallway looked different. Colder. Smaller. The beige walls felt like they were closing in. Like I was walking into a memory I didn't consent to. I passed Trina on the way to the next conference room. She glanced up from her phone and smirked. Smirked. It took everything in me not to say something. But Eugene gave me a quick glance and a head shake, silently telling me to hold the line. This wasn't about anger. This was about exposure. Letting the truth speak louder than any outburst ever could. Back inside, the mediation resumed. Her lawyer pushed again. Claimed she was entitled to rehabilitative support for the emotional damage caused by unmet needs in the relationship. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'd been the need meter, the fixer, the emotional sponge who soaked up her moods and handed back calm. But Eugene waited, calm, still sipping his coffee like nothing was happening. And then, with the subtlety of a magician pulling back a curtain, he handed over the new documents. Mara's envelope, neatly arranged and stamped. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make a speech. He simply said, "We'd like to submit additional evidence regarding undisclosed communications and willful deception." The judge read through them slowly. Her face shifted neutral to tense. When she reached the email chain referencing joint finances and Jasper's trip ideas, she finally looked up. "Miss Delaney?" the judge said, folding her hands. "Do you deny these correspondences are yours?" Trina didn't answer. She just blinked. "Because if you do, we can request further digital verification. But if you acknowledge them now, we can move forward." I watched Trina's expression freeze. Her lawyer leaned in, whispered something. She gave a tiny nod, but still said nothing. That silence was everything. And in that moment, watching her finally lose control of the narrative, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt exhausted, like someone who's been treading water for years and just spotted a life raft. After the session ended, the judge recommended postponing any rulings until the new materials were fully reviewed. Her tone was colder now, less interested in her lawyer's theatrics. As we stood to leave, Trina finally looked at me and said under her breath, "You were never supposed to see any of that." And I replied, without even thinking, "You were never supposed to lie for this long." I walked out first. I didn't look back. That night, back in the motel, I sat by the window with the blinds half closed, watching headlights pass on the distant freeway, and I thought about all the years I'd given her. How many mornings I made her coffee. How many nights I stayed up just to hear about her day. All of it rewritten in the background of someone else's love story. But this time I wasn't going to disappear quietly. Because the version of me she created in her head, the one who folds like always, that guy's gone. I don't know what I expected after the mediation hearing. Maybe silence. Maybe panic. But not what I got. The very next morning, my motel room phone rang. Not my cell, the actual landline. I didn't even realize it worked. I picked it up, confused, and heard a voice I hadn't heard since our engagement party. Delaney. No, not Trina Delaney, Jolene Delaney, her cousin. The one who gave the toast. The one who called me the calm to Trina's fire. The one who disappeared from family events shortly after we got married. I always assumed there was some falling out. I never asked. I should have. Her voice was quiet, like she was speaking through a pillow. Lowell, I need to tell you something. It's about Trina. About everything. I sat down fast. You're not the first, I said. But I'm listening. She hesitated, then said, she told people you had a breakdown 2 years ago. She told the family you were unstable. She started building this story long before you ever saw it coming. I froze. What kind of story? That you were emotionally manipulative. That you isolated her. That you threatened her when she tried to leave. She told her friends you had episodes. That she feared for her safety. I went cold, because I knew what this meant. It wasn't just about money. It was about narrative control. She was painting me as dangerous, irrational, even unhinged. She was trying to make sure that no matter what came out, no matter what I said, no one would believe me. She was setting the stage for total character assassination, like she was planning a courtroom play and I was cast as the villain before I even showed up. Jolene kept talking, told me about private Facebook posts I'd never seen. Screenshots she'd saved because something didn't feel right. Told me Trina and Jasper were more than an affair. They were planning to move, somewhere far, start a business, leave the mess behind me with my reputation shredded just enough to look like I deserved it. That's when the full weight of it hit me. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a slow-motion demolition. Not just of the marriage, of me, of who I was to my friends, my family, even to myself. I hung up the phone in a daze. For hours I didn't move, just stared at the wall, imagining all the conversations I hadn't known were happening. The dinners where she smiled and lied. The rooms she walked into, charming people into believing she was the victim. By late afternoon, my phone buzzed. A text from Mara. Meet me. Now, you're going to want to see this. I didn't question it. I just drove. No hesitation. The address was some small office park in the industrial district. The kind of place with peeling paint and buzzing lights, where old startups go to die. Mara was already there, pacing outside like she was keeping a secret she couldn't hold another second. She didn't say hi, just handed me a tablet, pressed play, and said, "This is from last week." It was a screen recording, a Zoom call. Trina, Jasper, and a man I didn't recognize, older, glasses, clearly a lawyer. Trina looked calm, cold, sharp. She said, "He doesn't know yet, but once the paperwork finalizes and he's been discredited, I'll have what I need. The accounts, the house, the statement. He won't even fight back, he'll fold like always." Jasper laughed. The lawyer said nothing, but then came the part that made my hands start to shake. Trina added, "Even if he tries to fight, we have the therapy note. It's just one line, but it's enough." The way I framed it, it makes him look like he's not all there. Therapy note? I hadn't been to therapy since college. What the hell was she talking about? And that's when Mara said, "She forged it, Lowell. She had a friend mock one up on an old letterhead. You were never the patient. But if it lands in the file, it's over." I felt like vomiting. She was planning to destroy not just my finances, but my credibility, my sanity. To make it so that if I ever stood up and told the truth, people would tilt their heads and go, "Well, you know, he was always kind of off." I was quiet for a long time. Then I looked at Mara and asked, Do I still have a shot? Stopping her? She nodded once. You have more than a shot. You have everything. But you need to stop playing defense. That night, I called Eugene. I told him everything. The forged note, the Zoom video, Jolene's call, and for the first time, I didn't hear sarcasm in his voice. No jokes. No dry remarks. He just said, "Then it's time we bury the script she wrote and start writing your own." 3 weeks later, we walked into court for the final hearing. I didn't wear anything special. Just a pressed shirt, dark slacks, and a pair of shoes that didn't squeak. Trina walked in like she was stepping onto a runway. Designer heels, tailored suit, hair curled at the ends like she was prepping for a photo shoot. But behind the gloss, I could see it, the stiffness in her smile, the darting glance she gave toward me, like she still wasn't sure how I'd managed to slip out from under her thumb. Eugene stood beside me flipping through folders like they were old cookbooks, calm as ever. He didn't even look up when he said, "You know, there's a special kind of joy in letting someone think they're winning, until they aren't." The judge called us in. This time, the courtroom felt smaller, tighter, like the walls themselves were listening. Her lawyer began with his same confident tone, arguing for the financial distribution, dismissing the relevance of my emotional overreactions, brushing aside the leaked Zoom call as irrelevant and unauthenticated. But then Eugene stepped forward and dropped the hammer. He submitted a notarized statement from Jolene, confirming Trina's fabricated narrative, including how she'd twisted my mental health history. He presented the forged therapy note, which, under subpoena, had already been confirmed as fraudulent by the clinic it supposedly came from. Then came the Zoom footage, the screenshots, the financial documents, the boarding passes, and finally, a quiet bombshell. A signed statement from one of Trina's own coworkers who admitted she'd been instructed to help hide the transfers between accounts. It was like watching a carefully stacked tower of lies collapse, brick by brick, in front of a silent room. Trina didn't say a word. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to melt through the floor. The judge sat back in her chair and said something I'll never forget. Simple, but final. "Mrs. Delaney, you are not only in breach of financial trust, but this court finds evidence of willful deceit, attempted character defamation, and potential fraud." Then she turned to me. "Mr. Monroe, you'll retain the home, the remaining joint assets, and the right to pursue damages if you choose. This court also advises you to seek formal counsel if you wish to press charges related to the forged documentation." I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just breathed. Later that day, I stood in the driveway of my own home. The same driveway she told me I was too boring to ever grow old in, and watched as she pulled away with nothing but the suitcase she came with. She didn't look back. Mara was the one who brought me coffee that evening. Real coffee. Not the kind I used to make and leave on the counter for Trina to ignore. We sat on the porch and said nothing for a long time. Then she nudged me gently and said, "You okay?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. And I said, "I think I finally might be. Now I'm not pretending everything's perfect. There are still echoes, those phantom feelings that creep in late at night. But I'm learning to live in truth again. To stop apologizing for simply wanting to be loved the way I gave it. And if you're watching this, wondering if keeping the peace is worth losing yourself over, I'm here to tell you, no. Peace without truth is just quiet heartbreak. You're allowed to stand up, even if your voice shakes. Thanks for listening to my story. If something in this story reminded you of a moment in your own life, a turning point, a confrontation, or a secret that finally came out, drop it in the comments below. Let's talk about it. You're not alone. Not here. This has been another story from Reddit Confessions, where every voice matters. Thanks for watching. Stay strong. Stay honest. And remember, folding isn't the same as failing. Not anymore.